Morning. Okay, so first of all, I just want to mention that this is a webinar available for LEUs, and I will be able to get a report afterwards for those of you that are here and attended. So I will send you your LEU probably tomorrow, I would say, from attending today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides and we will get going. Let's see here. There we go. So hey everybody, you are at the webinar for the National Book Festival Indiana and you. I am Suzanne Walker. I work at the Indiana State Library. I'm the director, that's me, of the Indiana Center for the Book and the Indiana Young Readers Center. And I am joined today, as I so often am, by Megan Teligman of Indiana Humanities. Megan is super knowledgeable about all things Indiana and literature, partly due to her work with the Eugene and Marilyn Glick Indiana Authors Award, and partly due to the fact that she is just super smart. So happy to be with you today, Megan. Megan is the Senior Program Manager over at Indiana Humanities. And then also with us today is Bronwyn Carlisle. Bronwyn works with Megan at Indiana Humanities, where she coordinates the Novel Conversations program. She's going to be monitoring the chat today, so feel free to include questions, comments, or ideas into the chat today. And Bronwyn or Megan or whoever, feel free to interrupt as I'm speaking. Megan, I feel like you're probably going to be the same way. So feel free to interrupt us if we need to address something as we are going along. So before we start talking about the National Book Festival, Megan and I thought we'd take a quick second to tell you guys a little bit about our organization. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
Thanks, Suzanne. Great to be with you today. I'm just going to say a few things about Indiana Humanities. If you're not familiar with us, we are a statewide nonprofit dedicated to encouraging Hoosiers to read, think, and talk. And we do that in a variety of ways. We are a grant maker. So if you have programs about history, literature, culture, anything related to the humanities, we do fund programs throughout the state at libraries, schools, and museums, are common partners. But yeah, we're here as a support system for public humanities work. And then also we create our own programs. So you might be familiar with our One State, One Story program, some of the other literary work we've done that we work a lot with libraries on. But we are also the home of the Indiana Authors Awards. So this is a biennial honor every other year given to the best books that came out in the past 2 years, and we do this in about 10 different categories. And the last round of the Indiana Authors Awards were given out in the summer of 2020. And so we are gearing up for another nomination cycle and award giving in 2022. So you can keep an eye on the Indiana Authors Awards page because we have a lot of exciting announcements coming this fall, including the nominations opening for 2022. So if you're an author, or if you know an author, make sure they know about this project. But we also make the or support the authors being available to audiences throughout the state too. So you can go on our website and see an upcoming event list where you see winning and shortlisted authors traveling the state to speak at libraries and schools and other organizations. And then the last thing I'll say about the Authors Awards that might be of interest to you is that we do a monthly book review of Indiana writers reviewing books by other Indiana authors. This month we have a review up of Adrian Matika's new book of poetry, Somebody Else Sold the World. So I encourage you to head over to Indiana Authors Awards and check out some of the resources and fun stuff that's available there.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of echo a little bit of that. If you guys are, if you do know any authors, definitely make sure that they nominate themselves or you can nominate them for this award. It's a super cool award. If you don't know very much about it, definitely take a chance, get in there and take a look. So I'll tell you guys a little bit quickly about the Indiana State Library. Most of you are probably familiar with us. I'll just share with you that the State Library is generally kind of like two things. First of all, we are a great library in the heart of downtown Indianapolis. We specialize in all things Indiana, including newspapers, maps, statistics, Hoosier genealogy, all kinds of that stuff. Also, the wonderful Indiana Young Reader Center. This is a picture of it behind me. There it is. You saw it a little bit, probably. And then the second thing that we do is we help support public libraries in the state of Indiana. So we do that through certification, through professional development, through library visits, obviously through the Inspire databases, and we help public libraries with all the reports that they have to do annually so that they can stay in good standing with the state. And here at the State Library, I do coordinate the Young Reader Center. As you can see from the picture, we are a physical space in the library. It's a great place for parents and kids to come and learn more about Indiana authors. We're a fantastic field trip destination for times when we are not in a pandemic. And if you are an Indiana author who writes for kids, or you know Indiana authors who write for kids, I want to know about it. The other thing I do here is I coordinate the Indiana Center for the Book. And as you can see from the logo, the Indiana Center for the Book is affiliated with the Library of Congress, that Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So basically what that means is that the Library of Congress is just super interested in the work that we're doing here that has to do with books and authors and reading and literacy. And every state in the nation has a Center for the Book. A lot of them do different types of work because there's lots of different ways that you can think about books and authors and reading and literacy. So for example, in Indiana, I actually run 2 writing contests for children, and that's something that other centers maybe don't do. But I have this 4th grade student essay contest all about statehood that happens in December, just for 4th graders. And then I also run Letters About Literature, which is a competition where students in grades 4 through 12 write a letter to an author, living or deceased, whose one work has changed the way they see themselves or see the world. So both of those are really great programs that we do through the Center for the Book. Something else I do through the Center for the Book is I interview authors with a toucan puppet. I hope some of you guys have seen some of Sammy's interviews. Sammy is a Hoosier toucan, and next week on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, Sammy is interviewing Leah Johnson, who's the author of You Should See Me in a Crown, so you can join us for that. But probably the most important thing to know for the purposes of this discussion today is that the Center for the Book in Indiana is what coordinates Indiana's our experiences at the National Book Festival. So I wanted to just quickly go ahead and tell you a little bit about the National Book Festival in the past, and then we'll talk about what it's like this year with the pandemic, etc. So in the past, the National Book Festival was this really fantastic face-to-face free event that was held in Washington, D.C. annually in the fall. And it started out at the Library of Congress. If you've been to the, I think it's the, is it the Thomas Jefferson Library of Congress? Anyway, if you've been to the, with the big, beautiful reading room and everything, it was there in that building. And then they moved it, it just got bigger and bigger, and they moved it out to the National Mall. And then the last few years, it was over at the Convention Center. So you can see in these pictures that it was at the Convention Center. And it was just awesome. It was amazing. Really big, huge free event. Anybody could go to hear authors speak. They always had hundreds of authors. You could get books signed. You could stand in really long lines to get book signs, but you could still get book signs. You could get free swag. You could learn about new books from every state in the union. You could participate in workshops. You name it, you could do it. It was really awesome. So there was always a part of the festival called Pavilion of the States, and every state had a booth, and each state was recognized. Each state recognized a different book. So in the picture here, you can see our booth from 2019. This is the last year that we could go. And we were recognizing the Addicts book by Phil Hose, which actually won the Indiana Authors Award the next year. So that was kind of great. And then that's also Dr. Carla Hayden, who's the Librarian of Congress. She stopped by the Indiana booth and got her picture taken, which was really fantastic. So, and then here's some more from another year. Obviously, I saw Clifford and had to get my picture taken with him because I'm an Indiana gal and he's an Indiana dog. So that was really fun. And then this is a picture of the Pavilion of the States. And you can kind of see way in the background how it says Midwest. And then over here it says Southwest. So they've got these huge areas all throughout the festival with different sections of the country represented. And this is just a tiny fraction of what the whole conference is like. It's just really kind of amazing. There's always like 200,000 to 300,000 people that attend, and that's kind of like on par with the Indy 500. So it's just enormous. Megan went with us in 2019 and just had a great time. So, but then of course, COVID happened, and the Library of Congress decided last year to go completely virtual, and this year is virtual as well. And then, so next year they're hoping to do a hybrid, but this year they're trying really, really hard to make this a national virtual event that touches every state. So I'm just gonna share, this is something that was on their website. And you can see that they're encouraging people to create their own National Book Festival experiences. You have 10 days to do it. It's from September the 17th through the 26th. And there's multiple formats with amazing authors and speakers, including Roxane Gay, who taught at Purdue. And for all the Gen Xers out there, that is Michael J. Fox, and he will be speaking at the National Book Festival. So that's pretty thrilling if you're my age. So in the past, probably none of you came to the festival because A, you probably didn't know about it, and B, it was in Washington, D.C. But this year you can attend, and I would be, hold on one second. Sorry. Okay. So anyway, probably none of you have come before. I was going to ask if there's anyone here attending that actually has come to the National Book Festival before. Is there anyone on other than Megan? I didn't. Yeah, it's pretty rare that people come, because normally if you come to the National Book Festival, you will stop by the Indiana booth and see us, and we'll have big hugs normally. So anyway, oh, fun. Nice. So the great thing is, though, that this year we actually have a toolkit available, and hopefully you can sort of attend this year because it is virtual, and we're telling you about it ahead of time. And we have this awesome resource for you so that you guys can easily get involved in the festival, and you won't even have to strain your brain cells at all, because I know you guys have just had your summer reading, and this way we've done all the work for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan, and she's going to tell us about this resource that we put together for you so that you guys can participate in the festival virtually. Megan?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. So yeah, we put together a short toolkit just to encourage local participation in this national festival, and particularly to highlight the excellent Indiana authors that are participating this year. So in the toolkit, as you flip through, you have a little bit of information about the amazing legacy of Indiana writers, about the National Book Festival. And then we just briefly highlight three Indiana writers, or three writers with Indiana connections, and their recent books. So the three writers that we chose are Jay Coles, who's a current Indiana resident and author of Tyler Johnson Was Here. And he has a new book coming out very soon, which I'm really excited about. The second writer is Roxane Gay, which she taught at Purdue for quite a few years and has some Indiana connections through her work there. And then finally, we highlighted Kekla Magoon, who grew up in Fort Wayne, I believe, and has a book that we want to pay special attention to, because it's actually a book that our Center for the Book has selected as the read from Indiana. And Suzanne can talk a little bit more about that in a second. So thanks for flipping through this, Suzanne. As you can see, we have a bio of each of the writers, a little bit of information about the book. And do you want to say anything about Season of Sticks Malone, Suzanne, while you're kind of on that page?
Sure. So the Season of Six Malone is a middle grade novel. It's all about an African American family who lives in Indiana in a suburb of Indianapolis. And it's just this great summer story about these two brothers, which you can kind of see right here in the corner. And they make friends with this really cool teenager named Styx. Styx, and they just think he's the coolest thing. And Styx leads them through this summer of doing an escalator trade. And this is where you start with a paper clip and you trade it for like a push pin, and you trade that for maybe like an old rusty pair of scissors, and then maybe you trade that for, something just marginally better. And he wants to do this all summer so that at the end of the summer they get a moped. So whether or not they get the moped, you'll have to read the book, but the brothers are really good at this because the very first thing they try to trade, which I think they succeed in doing it, they trade a bag of fireworks for their baby sister. So they're like a perfect pair to try to do this. It's a really sweet read, all about families. And of course, most of us probably know that Kekla recently won the Margaret A. Edwards Award. So we were super proud. And she grew up in Fort Wayne, but she does currently live in Vermont. So there's that. Okay.
So yeah, in the toolkit, you can kind of see these are just 3 writers that have significant Indiana connections that will be speaking at the National Book Festival. So they haven't released the schedule just yet. So we're going to encourage you to check back in with us or on the National Book Festival site to find the actual times they'll be speaking. And I'll just run through these program ideas now, Suzanne, if we're ready for that. We had a few ideas about how Indiana libraries might connect with this national festival. And one thing to do would be to potentially hold a watch party. So once the times of all of these authors speaking engagements are released, you could, as the guide says, pop some popcorn, set up the screen, and live stream the author's talk at your library, or plan a book discussion, or design some discussion questions for the screening itself. And just finding ways to connect with that unique experience of being able to hear these people from Indiana on such a important stage. Also, one other thing that the Library of Congress Book Festival has started doing is to create a podcast with the authors in the lineup. So at Indiana Humanities, we've done this in the past with some listening parties. So sitting, listening to one of the podcasts or watching one of the specials, and then having a conversation about it, either in person, or this would be particularly good if you're still doing virtual programming too. To encourage reading and engaging with National Book Festival authors, and particularly any of the ones from Indiana, you could do a Book It Like program or summer reading where you give prizes for reading from a featured list. And, particularly you might look at the former Indiana Great Reads from Great Places picks. And Suzanne, do you want to hop in and talk about what the Great Reads from Great Places program is?
Sure. So, as I said earlier, every year that's Indiana Center for the Book chooses a book to highlight. And I always like being at the festival because it's really fun to walk around to the different 50 plus states, because they have all the states are there and also the islands and territories. So it's really fun to see like all the books that each state chooses to highlight. We generally try to pick something that's very Indiana. So last year's book was for 2020 was Wake Up Woods. And if you guys don't have this book in your library yet, go get it because it's wonderful. So it's a picture book and it has informational text about, so it's it's a nonfiction book about Indiana native plants, but then it also has a little bit of like poetry about each plant. Super delightful. All of the illustrations are scientifically rendered, and so they're all completely accurate. I did get to blurb it on the back, so that's kind of exciting. If you have your copy, you can turn it over and see my little quote, which was really fun to do. But it's a wonderful book, and it's super Indiana because it was published by an Indiana publisher. It was written by two Indiana authors and it was illustrated by an Indiana illustrator. So when we found out about this book, we were like, well, that's definitely going to be the book that we choose for the National Book Festival. And then going back just 1 year in 2019, we did Addicts, Oscar Robinson, and the basketball team that awakens the city, which is a really important book. It's a YA, middle grade YA book, but I think it's a wonderful book for really anybody who likes sports, anybody who is interested in race history in Indiana. Those are really great, like overlapping topics that occur in this book. But it's really all about how the Crispus Attucks High School basketball team really kind of forced desegregation in the high school basketball tournament in Indiana, which was a huge deal, of course, back in the day when it happened. And then, of course, Oscar Robertson went on to become a legend, a legendary basketball player. So both of those books are just really great, delightful books. And we're very excited to add Kekla Magoon's Season of Six Malone to this lineup. We were excited for Seasons of Six Malone because we haven't had like a real fiction book in a while. And this one, like I said, it's set in an Indiana town. It's a fictionalized Indiana town based on a real Indiana town, but it's set in Indiana. And Kekla, she actually talks a little bit about Riley Hospital. She talks about the Children's Museum. So it's very kind of Indianapolis, Indiana based, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so that's a little bit about those three books. And, if you guys wanted to do a book club about the Crispus Attucks books, I think you'll probably talk about book clubs, but we have we have 15 copies of the Attucks book here at the state library that we could lend you. And then you could do a book club about the Attucks book. And that would be a way that you could tie into the National Book Festival if you wanted to. Heck, you could take your copies of Wake Up Woods and go out and do a nature walk. And I would think that would count too. So there's all kinds of things that you could do to, claim participation in the National Book Festival.
Thanks, Suzanne. If you want to scroll back down to that, yes, program page. Book clubs were the next thing to kind of talk about. Both Indiana Humanities and the State Library have opportunities to check out sets of books for particular book clubs or classroom conversations. And so you could encourage your book club or form a new book club to engage with these books, and you can get sets of the books for free in our statewide lending library program called Novel Conversations. And then the similar program, but for younger audiences run by the State Library, is called Circulating Book Club Kits for Youth. And that's one of Suzanne's programs there. So if you wanted to organize a book club and conversation, there are discussion guides or discussion questions in this program guide to kind of help form that conversation. Yeah, so you might consider organizing some book clubs around these Indiana authors.
And Megan, for when Indiana Humanities sends out a book club, do they send questions along as well?
We don't typically know.
You don't? Okay. We do. So if you check a book club out from the Indiana State Library, you'll get a little red folder that's got lots of discussion question ideas and sometimes even program ideas and things like that. And then clearly I know though that if you checked with Bronwyn, she could also send you questions for books. So if you're not sure, or me, if you would like to do a book club and you are kind of developing questions as your sticking point, don't let that worry you. Bronwyn and I can certainly help you get discussion questions for a book club together.
Thanks, Suzanne. And then the last couple ideas we had here were maybe if you're into poetry as like a different genre, maybe you have a poetry slam where you feature works by National Book Festival poets, and there are many excellent ones featured this year, or invite community members to read a favorite poem or a featured writer. And then maybe you have an opportunity for participants to do like an open mic or share original poetry too. So you could incorporate any of these some creative writing exercises if that would be appealing to your audiences. And then of course, you could plan a road trip to next year's National Book Festival. in our nation's capital. Indiana has such a robust writing scene. Like, we're always thrilled to see Indiana writers take that national stage each year. So there's always some kind of connection, or you can just drop by the Indiana booth and say hi to the Indiana State Library and Indiana Humanities in future years as well. Do you want to say anything about a road trip idea, Suzanne?
Only let's do it. I think that would be amazing. I will mention it's not 100% that the library or that the National Book Festival is going to happen in person next year. The last I heard is that they're hoping for a hybrid, but of course it all depends on what's happening with,
Yes.
the world. So I will say though, if you ever get a chance to go, please go, because it's really delightful. And I mean, it's free, you don't have to pay for it. And you get, you know, just as many authors as you would as if you went to ALA, and sometimes they're even more accessible. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the last thing, and go through sharing your ideas with us. So, like, if you do end up planning something around the National Book Festival or with Indiana authors, we would love to help you promote that. So we did create like a little brief form you can fill out and just let us know about your programs, ideas, or events, and we can help share those to a broader audience or provide support as you're planning. If you have an idea and you want to talk through it, myself, Suzanne, and Bronwyn are all resources. If you'd like to chat about some program ideas around Indiana authors or the National Book Festival.
So I just wanted to see, can you see the form now?
Yeah.
Or no? You can? Okay, cool. So that's what the form looks like. It's real simple. You just put your name and what you're planning on doing. There is like space to attach a file, but don't feel like you have to. You could just let us know like what you're going to do. That would be cool. This is the first year that we've really kind of encouraged people to take a look at the National Book Festival and do something with it. So we'd be happy, if any of you guys do a little something. So Megan, I think the next thing is for me to walk through the website. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take you guys over. Can you see this? I was worried when I go to a different tab. Okay, great. So this is what the National Book Site website looks like. And I think I can pop this in the chat real quick. There you go, multi-talented. And I will tell you right away that not a lot of it is live yet. So you can, the first thing that I would encourage you guys to do though is right in the middle where it says experience the festival. You can go ahead and subscribe to the National Book Festival blog. You just put your email address in and then you will get updates when things do come live. So that way you can be the first person to see. I do like exploring the past festivals just because I've been there a couple of times, but you can see just in this tiny picture, this is when it was on the mall and you can see all those tents. And as soon as they moved it over to the convention center, it just kind of blew up because they had a lot more space and it was a lot more actually accessible for people. So again, the dates are September 17th through the 26th. And the other thing that I wanted to mention are the authors. So just from this list, obviously we talked about Roxane Gay already. I mentioned Michael J. Fox. Did I tell you Michael J. Fox is going to be at the National Book Festival? Also Angie Thomas, who wrote The Hate U Give, she's going to be there. And then this is sort of the very short list. They are going to expand on this list. I think August 16th is the day that there's going to be a big update to this website. So you want to kind of tune in that day if you can. On this list, I was familiar with Christopher Paolini, who wrote the Aragon books a long while back. Megan, do you know any other authors on this list to jump in and do a shout out for?
Yeah, Isabel Wilkerson wrote the recent book Cast, just about race in America. Obviously, you mentioned Angie Thomas. There was somebody else I was thinking about highlighting, Nikki Giovanni, amazing poet. And I can't remember who else I was going to mention. Maybe they were on the first page. Oh, Ishiguro, Remains of the Day, and what's the one about the clones? I can't remember. good book. Love that book. So those are some of my favorites. Never Let Me Go. Thanks. Bronwyn's always got my back on book titles.
Yay.
Yeah. So yeah, just a lot of excellent writers, and I think the longer list that they release on the 16th will have even more fabulous stuff on it. So.
Yeah, so they normally get about 125 authors, and they're not small names usually. It's usually some pretty big bang for your buck. So I'm gonna head over. This is still the front page. I wanted to go ahead and show you this highlighted video section. So one of the things that they keep telling us is going to be coming is a bunch of videos on demand. And I thought what we would do is go ahead and just take a quick look at some of the ones that they have done throughout this year and also a little bit last year. So there was this like poetry spotlight. I mean, if you feel like doing poetry programs, you could just plan something. You could say, we're going to do a National Book Festival poetry watch party. You could just plan that, and then they will have something that you'll be able to kind of plug into that. And if not, you could use this one from April, but I'm sure that they will. This was a conversation with Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress. They have different themed programs. So like this one was about war and the American soldier. And then I'm just going to keep scrolling down so that you can see some of the things from the 2020 National Book Festival, just so you can get an idea of the kinds of things that might be coming. So we've got Kate DiCamillo and Ann Patchett, who did a Q&A, John Sheshka, Chelsea Clinton. I mean, like huge names of people that they interview. Pam Muniz Ryan. Of course, these are all children's authors, are the ones that I like to highlight. K.A. Holt, and then way down here, John Grisham. Have you guys heard of John Grisham? He's a pretty famous author. And then Jason Reynolds did one. So, you know, these are all Q&As that they did with authors for 2020. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do for 2021, but it should be on par with this kind of outline. Let's see here. Okay, so I wanted to just go back. I actually want to go ahead and show you. This is the 2020 site. So this is not current. This is the 2020 site. But I just wanted to show you quickly. If we look at the, oh, it was there this morning. Hold on. Let me see if I can do it here. I think it's going to work. Yeah. So this last year was the lineup of authors. So they had so many that they had to kind of alphabetize them. So M.T. Anderson, Becky Albert Holly, Jerry Craft. I mean, they just had so many, so many. So we're expecting something, you know, they had Melinda Gates. So we're expecting something on par with this when they do the announcement, either on August 16th or even they might wait and do it on the first day of the festival. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to show you that from last year so that you could kind of get a sense of what was going to happen. And I'm not sure. Yeah, so this is sort of what the schedule might look like once they finally get it out. Again, they have a different vendor this year, so I'm not exactly sure, but it could be that they'll have specific times that things will be happening, or it could just be that they're going to drop a bunch of videos in and you'll be able to stream them kind of at your leisure. I'm not really sure. But you could take a look if you just Google National Book Festival 2020, you would be able to find this. Or I can just drop the link in. I'll just drop this link in case you guys want to sort of look at that. The other thing that I didn't say is that if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in the chat or ideas of what you might do. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back to National Book Festival, and this festival information page is pretty sparse right now. It just kind of has some more ideas of things to do. It gives you the dates again, September 17th through the 26th. And that's kind of it. So they do want you to subscribe so that you can get an email when they do some updating. So yeah, so we've got some time, and that's pretty much your tour of the website, I guess. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my slides. Here we go. So we've talked about the toolkit and we demoed the website. Oh, now I went back to the website. There you go. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Megan and we'll just kind of do a wrap up real quick. But if anyone has questions or ideas of what you might do, please go ahead and put that in the chat. We're here to help.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to do, feel free to pick through the website, read through the toolkit, so you can learn more about these writers and some of the books that are featured, and see if anything, fits your programming goals, or if you think it would make a interesting, program for your audiences. Like I said, there are discussion questions in there to kind of help you get a sense of the type of conversation you might have around one of these texts. And also those program ideas that you saw when we were kind of flipping through are all listed there too. So we encourage you to kind of take this back to your teams, especially as we kind of wait for the full list of everything that's going to happen, and do some planning. And we showed you also the link where you can let us know if you're planning to do anything. And if you do end up putting together a program, we appreciate you letting us know about it. Suzanne, do you want to talk about any other next steps that I'm forgetting?
Well, I definitely want to address Sarah's question in the chat. She says, any idea what the slate will be for 2022? So, gosh, Sarah, I wish the Library of Congress would plan this a year ahead of a year in advance. They just don't. I think it has something to do with federal funding. They have a really difficult time planning more than a year out. And it always puts all of us kind of in a little bit of a tricky situation because on one hand, they would really like us to do something to make this National Book Festival really feel national. Like they'd love us to do some sort of programming in the state of Indiana, but they also can't really tell us what what content is going to be available until really close. So the answer to that is no. I have no idea what the plan is going to be for 2022. But again, if you feel nimble, you could certainly say, hey, we're going to do a National Book Festival watch party and just leave it at that. And then you could choose something from the video on demands to go ahead and show. And then Kelly has a great question. Who would we need to ask permission to post a link to some of the book author videos? I think you could just do it. Because I think that's part of the joy of it is that it is, kind of a free thing available for the world. So I don't think there's anything that now I'm not sure you might, it might just be linking to it. I don't think you would be able to, I don't really know if you could like download something, but I think you would just be linking to it and sending it back there. So as long as it's okay with your, admin, you could certainly get over there and do it, I would say. So yeah, Sarah, back to your question. Don't know. We kind of, this is the first year again that we're kind of encouraging people to take a look at it and really dive in if you can. Is anybody on the webinar today thinking like, hey, I could do something? Or are you all sort of thinking like, it's July, this is in September, these people are crazy? Because that's sort of how we feel sometimes. But anyway, just to be real. Okay, all right, kind of crickets. All right, well, so on the slide, we'll go ahead and go over what the next steps would be. If you, oh, and that's a really good point too. Lola says she's already got September planned, so it's hard to like stick something in. So, all right, well, I guess this is really perfect for people that are a little bit, behind. This would be a great thing to just slide in if you need something for September. And also maybe you could put a little, bookmark in September for next year. Just note that the National Book Festival does happen in September every year. You could keep a little hole in your program guide because I'm pretty sure it will be at least hybrid next year. So, okay, so your next steps would be to plan a program related to it somehow. Tell your community about the program, of course. Reach out to us if you have any questions at all, and then fill out that WUFU form through Indiana Humanities to let us know. So the last thing was just your ideas. And I can see that Samantha mentioned she could see doing an author talk watch party, kicking off a book club for Season of Sticks Malone. That would be great. I do know that Kekla Magoon is one of the authors that is actually going to be something for the National Book Festival. I mean, the three that we talked about were Kekla, J. Coles, and Roxane Gay. Yes, so all three of those will be featured somehow. So they will probably, I think it's probably going to be a video on demand with them. So that would be available. You could watch that and then do a book club. That'd be perfect. Yep. Okay. Anything you want to add, Megan?
I don't think so. If you need sets of books for a book club and you want to check them out from us, please feel free to reach out to myself, Suzanne, or Bronwyn if you're not already signed up for Novel Conversations, or if you aren't familiar with the lending library for younger readers that is through the state library. Feel free to let us know and we'll get you signed up for those things.
Okay, and this is me and Megan, and Bronwyn, I didn't put you on the slide, but if you want to put your email in the chat, you could. There she is. And Bronwyn, again, is the specialist for Novel Conversations, which she also just put the link there. Okay, well, does anybody have any questions about anything related to the National Book Festival or to our book lending kits? Because Bronwyn and I are both here. We can answer those questions. Or the Indiana Authors Award. Okay, well, we're going to be short and sweet today then. We did cover the amount of time that we need to get an LEU, so I will be sending LEUs out tomorrow, but we can go ahead and wrap up if that feels good to everybody. Yay! You guys are all so sweet. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just really glad about the opportunity to tell people in Indiana about the National Book Festival. You know, one last thing I'll say is that if you haven't really taken an opportunity to even just look at the Library of Congress's website, just take a look and see what kinds of collections they have. This is a really good time of year just to check in and learn more about your national library. You know, I know you know a lot about your local library, obviously, and hopefully about your state library, but the Library of Congress is really your national library, and they have all kinds of cool things. So, cool. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Megan, final words? You good?
No, just thanks everybody for being here, and let us know if you ever want to brainstorm or kick around some ideas.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much.